Most people pouring granola over a bowl of yogurt every morning believe they've already won the hardest battle of their day. They picked the healthy thing. They skipped the pastry, skipped the sugary cereal, skipped the drive-thru, and reached for the cup that every magazine, every doctor's poster, and every fitness influencer has spent 20 years calling one of the smartest foods you can eat. Nobody stands in the dairy aisle feeling the low hum of guilt they feel reaching for soda or a bag of chips. Yogurt is the safe choice. It's the responsible choice. It's the one thing in the cart nobody feels the need to justify. And that trust, that quiet, unquestioned trust, is exactly what this investigation is about. Here at The Hidden Receipt, we spent weeks pulling apart the paperwork behind 9 of the biggest yogurt brands sold in America. Not the marketing, the paperwork, federal lawsuit filings, published nutrition data straight off the labels, court settlements sitting on the public record, corporate ownership documents that most shoppers will never think to look at because why would they? What we found wasn't one terrifying chemical hiding in a lab report waiting to make a scary headline. It was something quieter, and honestly in some ways harder to defend yourself against, because it hides in plain sight on the front of the cup you already trust. Brands have built entire identities around a small handful of trigger words: clean, natural, zero, probiotic, organic, protein. Words that cost a company nothing to print and mean far less than you'd assume the second you actually read past them into the ingredient panel. And here's the part that surprised even us. Some of the worst offenders on this list weren't the cheap tubs shoved down on the bottom shelf where nobody's looking. They were the ones wearing the health halo. The ones parents specifically grab because they trust the name. The ones that cost more precisely because shoppers believe that extra dollar is buying something real, something better, something safer for the people they love. One brand on this list has already paid out $35 million in a federal settlement over health claims a court decided were misleading. Another is being sued right now, in 2026, by its own single biggest competitor, over an accusation that it's lying about how much protein is actually sitting in the cup. A third is currently facing multiple lawsuits at the same time, over ingredients, over marketing language, and over a plastic-related chemical nobody expects to find in something they spoon into their kids' breakfast bowl every morning. You are going to recognize almost every single name on this list. We're counting all 9 down, from concerning to genuinely hard to believe, and then finishing with the 3 brands that actually earn the trust everyone else here is borrowing without ever paying for it. Let's get into it. Number 9. Yoplait Original. This is the yogurt most Americans grew up with. General Mills built it into a breakfast table fixture, the little foil-lidded cup in every lunchbox, every fridge door in the country. The one your parents packed because it felt like the responsible thing to do next to a Lunchable or a bag of chips. Here's the number that never shows up in the commercials. A single 6-ounce cup of Yoplait Original Strawberry carries 19 grams of total sugar, with 13 of those grams added, not naturally occurring from the milk. That's close to what you'd get from a small candy bar, sitting inside something marketed as a wholesome start to the day. Peel back the foil and look at the texture. Smooth, glossy, almost syrupy before you even stir. That sheen is not an accident. When you strip fat out of dairy to make it 99% fat-free, the exact language every Yoplait cup still leans on, you strip out flavor and mouthfeel right along with it. The industry standard fix is simple and well documented. Replace roughly 1 gram of removed fat with 1 gram of added sugar to rebuild the taste the fat used to carry. Yoplait didn't invent that trick, but it's one of the most visible and most purchased examples of it on shelves anywhere in the country. General Mills has tens of billions in annual revenue and an entire research division dedicated to reformulation. Cutting added sugar in a flagship product is well within their financial and technical reach. This is a shelf life and taste profile decision, not a budget constraint. You're paying for nostalgia, and the ingredient panel is paying for it in sugar, 1 small cup at a time. Compare it to Yoplait's own Greek 100 Vanilla, which runs about 100 calories, 15 grams of protein, and just 7 grams of sugar in a similar-sized cup. Roughly triple the protein and less than half the sugar, sitting on the same shelf under the same brand name. That gap alone tells you Yoplait knows exactly how to build a lower sugar cup. They just haven't applied that knowledge to the one everyone grew up trusting by default. Number 8. YoCrunch, owned by Danone, the same multinational behind Danone and Oikos. YoCrunch built its entire identity around a gimmick: A separate topping compartment snapped onto the lid, filled with M&Ms, Oreo pieces, or Butterfinger bits, positioned as the fun yogurt that gets kids excited about eating something dairy-based. The marketing leans hard on the word yogurt doing all the heavy lifting while the topping compartment carries the actual appeal. Independent nutrition reviews list YoCrunch varieties carrying around 15 grams of added sugar per cup, paired with as little as 4 grams of protein, one of the weakest protein-to-sugar ratios of any major yogurt brand on shelves today. A plain Greek yogurt flips that ratio completely. Back in 2009, Danone had to pull YoCrunch vanilla low-fat yogurt with M&Ms off shelves nationwide after discovering it contained undeclared wheat. A serious and potentially dangerous omission for anyone managing a wheat allergy or celiac disease, information found nowhere on the label the family buying it was relying on. That's not a hypothetical. That's a real recall on record, for a company that still markets this format to children today. A dessert wearing a yogurt costume, sold in the same refrigerated aisle as the products people buy specifically because they think they're avoiding dessert for their kids. Number 7. Noosa Yogurt. The packaging alone does a lot of the selling. A small kangaroo on the lid, rustic hand-lettered typography, language like honestly delicious, positioned as an artisanal, small-batch, better-for-you indulgence imported from somewhere that just feels more wholesome than a factory floor in the Midwest. Noosa's lemon variety has been independently reported at 21 grams of total sugar per serving, with 14 of those grams added, among the highest sugar counts of any mainstream yogurt reviewed by outlets tracking the category. 21 grams is close to 2 full tablespoons of sugar, in a single small tub, sold in the same case as products marketed on being low sugar and high protein. Noosa doesn't hide that it's a full-fat, indulgent product, and to their credit, nothing in the ingredient list is a mystery chemical. That's not the issue here. The issue is shelf placement and visual language, right next to plain Greek yogurt and protein-forward brands, dressed in the same rustic, health-adjacent aesthetic while delivering a sugar load closer to a dessert than a breakfast. You're not wrong to enjoy it occasionally. You're wrong if you've been treating it as the same category as the yogurt sitting right beside it in your cart. Number 6. Cabot Triple Cream Vanilla Bean Greek Yogurt. Cabot built its reputation on New England dairy heritage and farmer-owned cooperative branding, the kind of imagery that implies simplicity, small farms, and trust. Red barns and green hills printed right on the lid. Nutrition reviewers comparing dozens of Greek yogurts have flagged this specific product as carrying the highest sugar content of any Greek yogurt in their side-by-side comparisons, alongside 13 grams of fat, 8 of them saturated. A combination more in line with a milkshake than a protein snack. Greek yogurt exists as a category specifically because of its reputation for being high protein and comparatively low in sugar. That reputation is the entire reason it commands a premium price over regular yogurt in the first place. Triple Cream inverts that reputation completely, while still wearing the Greek yogurt label people reach for when they're trying to eat better. Read past Greek in Vermont, and Triple Cream starts sounding indulgent for a reason. It's doing exactly what the name says. The problem isn't the product lying to you. The problem is what shoppers assume the word Greek is doing for them that it simply isn't doing here. Someone managing blood sugar, buying this specifically because Greek yogurt has a reputation as the safe choice, is getting a very different nutritional product than the one they think they picked up. If this is already changing how you read a yogurt label, you're about halfway through. The next few brands involve real lawsuits, real ownership reveals, and one company whose own name has become shorthand for a specific kind of broken promise. Number 5. Stonyfield Organic. For decades, Stonyfield was the poster child for independent organic dairy, built by a New Hampshire farmer named Gary Hirschberg into one of the most trusted names in the natural foods aisle, complete with a cartoon cow on the lid, a Profits for the Planet giving program, and a founder who spent years testifying in front of Congress about corporate food transparency. Here's the ownership history most shoppers never see. Danone, the French multinational, took a 40% stake in Stonyfield back in 2001 and owned the company outright by 2014. Then in 2017, as part of an antitrust settlement tied to Danone's roughly $10 billion acquisition of White Wave Foods, regulators required Danone to sell Stonyfield off entirely. Danone sold it to Lactalis, the single largest dairy company on the planet, for $875 million. Roughly 20 times Stonyfield's annual earnings at the time. The cartoon cow stayed on the lid. The independent farmer's company it once was did not survive the decade. Stonyfield's own founder called the sale a strange set of circumstances, and it is. The same brand that once symbolized resistance to industrial dairy is now owned by one of the two largest industrial dairy conglomerates on Earth. This is the same story that plays out across the organic food aisle again and again. In bread, in cereal, in yogurt. A beloved small brand becomes the acquisition target precisely because of the trust it built over decades, and that trust gets sold along with the company. No relabeling required. Longtime customers still debate whether the yogurt tastes different since the sale. What's not up for debate is who signs off on sourcing decisions now, and it isn't a farmer from New Hampshire. Number 4. Chobani. Chobani built its entire brand identity on being the anti-establishment option. The upstart, founded by a Turkish immigrant who took on big yogurt with Greek yogurt, and one still positioned today as founder-led, mission-driven, and fundamentally more honest than the industrial dairy giants surrounding it on the shelf. That story is exactly why the last 18 months have been so rough for the brand. In 2025, a class action lawsuit alleged that Chobani's only natural ingredients labeling concealed the use of monk fruit extract and potential synthetic contaminants that consumers wouldn't expect from a product marketed on the word natural. A separate 2025 suit cited independent testing from an organization called Plasticist that reportedly found phthalates, industrial chemicals used to make plastics flexible, and linked in research to hormone disruption in Chobani products marketed as natural and wholesome. A third suit targeted Chobani's complete product line specifically, alleging that its bold plus symbol marketing implied a level of nutritional completeness the product didn't actually deliver once you compared the label to the claim. Chobani has denied the allegations across the board and maintains its labels comply with federal regulations. Then in June 2026, the story got stranger still. Danone, Chobani's own biggest competitor in the Greek yogurt aisle, filed a lawsuit against Chobani directly, alleging that its 32-ounce 20-gram protein tubs use inflated serving sizes to advertise 20 grams of protein per serving when the actual content per real-world serving is closer to 18. Whatever the outcome in court, the irony is hard to miss. The brand that spent over a decade building its reputation on being more honest than the industry it disrupted is now being accused by that same industry of running the exact kind of label math it was founded to push back against. None of these cases are settled as of this video, and Chobani continues to sell more Greek yogurt in America than any other single brand. That scale is exactly why the outcome matters beyond the courtroom. Whatever precedent gets set here shapes labeling practices for the entire category, not just one company's cups. Number 3. Danone Light and Fit. Marketed directly at people counting calories, managing diabetes risk, and consciously avoiding added sugar. Light and Fit's zero sugar line promises exactly what the name implies, right there in bold letters above the nutrition panel. No sugar, no artificial flavors, no artificial sweeteners. In July 2025, a class action complaint alleged that Danone's Light and Fit Strawberry Zero Sugar Yogurt, despite carrying a front label claim of no artificial flavors or sweeteners, actually contains Reb M, a steviol glycoside sweetener the complaint alleges is produced through industrial fermentation and additional chemical processing, rather than simply extracted from the stevia leaf the way older stevia products were. The product line is specifically positioned toward health-conscious shoppers actively trying to avoid synthetic processing in their food. The exact audience the labeling was written to reassure. Whether Reb M legally counts as artificial under food labeling law is genuinely still being argued in court as this goes to air. What isn't in dispute is that the word zero printed across the front of that cup is doing an enormous amount of promotional work for an ingredient story that turns out to be far more complicated than 4 letters can honestly convey. We're getting close to the 2 brands that will genuinely surprise you, including a company most people consider the single most trustworthy name in the entire yogurt aisle. Stay with us. Number 2. And this one is personal for a lot of families. Danone's broader everyday yogurt lineup, going back to some of its most recommended and longest-running products, has repeatedly run into the same wall. Reformulation hasn't caught up to the wholesome dairy image the brand still trades on decades later. Independent nutrition reviews comparing dozens of yogurts have flagged multiple Danone fruit on the bottom varieties among the highest sugar yogurts widely available in American grocery stores. frequently cited alongside Yoplait Original as one of the two most common worst offenders nutritionists warn shoppers about by name. This is a company with the global resources, the lab access, and the reformulation history to fix any of these products at scale whenever it chooses to. The fruit on the bottom format itself is part of the trick, and it's worth understanding exactly how it works. A layer of fruit preserve, essentially the same thing as jam, engineered specifically to sit undisturbed and unmixed at the bottom of the cup until you stir it in yourself. Adding a sugar load that has very little to do with the real fruit imagery splashed across the front. Spoon straight down through an unstirred cup and you'll feel the difference between the tangy yogurt on top and the dense syrupy layer waiting underneath. That layer is doing more of the sweetening than the branding wants you to notice. Number 1. Activia by Dano. If any single yogurt product built the entire yogurt as medicine narrative that now sells nearly everything else on this list, from probiotic claims to gut health marketing to clinically studied cultures, it's this one. Starting in 2006, Danone ran a massive, years-long, multi-million-dollar ad campaign fronted by actress Jamie Lee Curtis sitting on a couch talking directly to camera, claiming Activia and its companion product Dan Active were clinically and scientifically proven to regulate digestion and boost the immune system in ways ordinary competing yogurts supposedly couldn't match. Millions of people, a lot of them managing real digestive discomfort, switched brands specifically because of that promise. A federal class action followed, arguing the claims went well beyond what the underlying science actually supported. In 2010, Danone settled for $35 million in a federal court in Ohio, and as part of that settlement was legally barred going forward from claiming that any yogurt, dairy drink, or probiotic product reduces the likelihood of catching a cold or the flu, unless the company can get that specific claim independently approved by the FDA first. That's not a fringe accusation pulled from a wellness blog. That's a federal settlement on the public record involving the single most recognizable health yogurt brand sold in the United States. For nearly 2 decades since, Activia has continued selling on a probiotic gut health story that a federal court already ruled the company oversold once, with real money changing hands as a result. If the brand that essentially invented the modern yogurt as medicine category in America had to pay out to settle claims about its own honesty, that's worth sitting with for a second before you trust the next probiotic promise printed on the next lid you pick up. Activia is still one of the best-selling yogurt brands in the country today, still marketed on digestive health, still stocked at eye level in nearly every grocery store in America. The settlement didn't end the brand, it just meant the specific claims on the label had to get quieter. Now that you know what to watch for, here are the 3 that actually hold up. These aren't consolation picks handed out to soften the blow. They're brands whose labels say less because there's genuinely less to hide, and whose sugar numbers and ownership stories survive the exact same scrutiny we just put 9 much bigger names through. Best option number 3, Wallaby Organic. Wallaby makes its plain Greek yogurt from exactly 2 things: USDA-certified organic whole milk and live active cultures. Nothing else on the ingredient panel. The company sources its milk from pasture-raised herds on organic family farms, carries full USDA organic certification, and also holds B Corp status, a designation that actually requires third-party verification of social and environmental standards, not just a logo a brand can slap on after paying a licensing fee. Because the plain variety carries no added sweetener at all. The only sugar present in that cup is the natural lactose that occurs in milk itself, nothing engineered in afterward. Flavored varieties do add organic cane sugar to balance the tartness, so the plain tub is where this brand's simplicity really shows up in full. It won't have the cult following or the national ad budget of the bigger names higher on this list, but the ingredient panel is about as short as Greek yogurt gets anywhere in the country. Best option number 2, Siggi's. Siggi's exists specifically because its founder, an Icelander named Siggi Hilmarsson who moved to New York to attend business school, was genuinely startled by how much sugar was hiding in a product his home country treated as a simple low-sugar dairy staple. Some American yogurts, he said at the time, had as much sugar as a can of soda. He built the entire brand around traditional Icelandic skyr, deliberately formulated with less sugar and a shorter ingredient list than almost anything else on the shelf next to it. Worth being upfront about, the same way we were upfront about Stonyfield. Siggi's was purchased by Lactalis, the same French dairy giant that now owns Stonyfield, back in 2018, and it continues to operate as a standalone brand inside that much larger company. That's the same pattern of consolidation we flagged earlier. The difference here is what actually happened to the product after the sale. Siggi's flavored lines still run in the 8 to 11 gram sugar range per serving, and the brand's dedicated lower sugar options run as low as 2 grams, a fraction of what you'd find in a cup of Yoplait or Noosa. The ownership structure changed. The founder's original math on sugar mostly didn't, and that's the part that actually matters when you're standing in front of the cooler deciding what goes in your cart. Best option number 1. Phage Total. The Philippou family opened a small dairy shop in Athens back in 1926, and nearly 100 years later, Phage plain Greek yogurt is still made from a recipe with exactly 2 ingredients: Grade A pasteurized milk and live-active yogurt cultures. That's the entire label. No added sugar, no natural flavors, no stabilizers, no gums or starches standing in for the slow, traditional straining process that's supposed to be what makes real Greek yogurt thick in the first place. Phage is non-GMO project verified and specifically sources milk produced without RBST, the synthetic growth hormone used in some conventional dairy operations. Spoon it straight from the tub, and the texture holds its shape rather than sliding around the container the way a stabilizer-thickened yogurt does. If you want a single fast rule for identifying whether a Greek yogurt is actually doing what the word Greek is supposed to promise, hold Phage Total's ingredient list up next to any of the 9 brands ranked above it. 2 words versus 20. And that gap is the whole investigation in miniature. Before you close this, here's the one rule worth keeping. Flip the cup over and count the ingredients before you look at anything else on the label, including the front. Real yogurt is milk and live cultures, full stop. The way it's been made for thousands of years before any of these companies existed. Everything past those 2 ingredients, tapioca starch, natural flavors, added cane sugar, corn syrup, stabilizing gums, exist for one of 3 reasons: to extend shelf life, to rebuild texture after fat was stripped out, or to make a low-margin commodity product taste enough like a treat that people keep buying it out of habit rather than nutrition. Organic tells you how the milk was farmed. It tells you absolutely nothing about how much sugar got added to the finished product afterward. And it tells you nothing at all about who actually owns the company behind the label you've decided to trust. Only 2 things actually require independent third-party verification rather than a brand simply printing a word on its own packaging: non-GMO project verification and an ingredient list short enough that you don't need a chemistry background to read it out loud. Everything else on the front of that cup, the flags, the cartoon cows, the clinically proven, the plus symbols, is a promise, not a proof. Plain yogurt from almost any brand with your own fresh fruit added at home beats nearly every flavored cup on this entire list on sugar, on cost, and on honesty, since you're the one deciding what goes in it. If this changed how you look at your yogurt aisle, sending it to someone in your life who buys these brands every single week is probably the most useful thing you can do with the next 5 minutes.